United States history. Around 1800 AD. Part 4. Connecticut. 1875. Hartford became Connecticut's sole capital city. Hawaii. 1875. Reciprocity Treaty signed, boosting sugar trade with the U.S. Kentucky. 1875. First Kentucky Derby is held at Churchill Downs. Mississippi. 1875. White Democrats regain control, suppressing black political participation. Colorado. August 1, 1876. Colorado becomes the 38th state, earning the nickname Centennial State. New Jersey. 1876. Thomas Edison establishes his Menlo Park lab. Montana. 1876. Battle of the Little Bighorn. Sioux and Cheyenne warriors defeated Lieutenant Colonel George Custer. North Dakota. 1876. Sitting Bull's victory at Little Bighorn. Many participants were Dakota Hunkpapa. South Dakota. 1876. Battle of Little Bighorn, Montana. Lakota, Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, defeated Custer, but U.S. retaliated. New Mexico. 1876 to 1881. Lincoln County War involved Billy the Kid, Henry McCarty, Pat Garrett, and cattle baron John Chisholm. Arizona. 1877. Silver discovered near Tombstone, sparking the Wild West era. Colorado. 1877. Leadville's silver rush begins, making Horace Tabor, the Silver King, one of the wealthiest men in America. Connecticut. 1877. The world's first telephone exchange opened in New Haven. Florida. 1877. Reconstruction ends. Georgia. 1877. Jim Crow laws implemented. Oregon. 1877. Gold rushes spark conflicts like Nez Perce War. Idaho. 1877. Nez Perce War. Chief Joseph's retreat through Idaho, ending at Bear Paw Mountains. Montana. 1877. Nez Perce War. Chief Joseph's retreat through Idaho, ending at Bear Paw Mountains. New Jersey. 1877. Thomas Edison invents the phonograph. South Dakota. 1877. Crazy Horse surrendered at Fort Robinson, Nebraska, assassinated months later. District of Columbia. 1877. Compromise of 1877 ends Reconstruction. Federal troops withdraw from D.C. Kansas. 1878. Exodusters, black settlers from the South, founded Nicodemus, a thriving black town. Tennessee. 1878. Yellow fever kills 5,200 in Memphis. Connecticut. 1879. The new state capitol building in Hartford was completed. New Jersey. 1879. Thomas Edison invents practical light bulb. Ohio. 1879. Cleveland becomes the first city with electric streetlights. Iowa. 1870s. The Meskwaki tribe repurchased land in Tama County, forming today's Meskwaki settlement. Kansas. 1870s. Buffalo hunters decimated herds, devastating plains tribes. Minnesota. 1870s. Flour milling booms in Minneapolis, e.g., Washburn Mill. The city becomes the milling capital of the world. Nebraska. 1870s. Buffalo Bill Cody scouted for the Army at Fort McPherson, later founding his Wild West show. Wisconsin. 1870s. Lumber industry peaks in northern forests. Dairy farming dominates agriculture. Nevada. 1870s to 1890s, mining declined. West Virginia. 1870s to 1900s, railroads expanded, fueling coal, timber, and oil industries. Immigrants from Europe and African Americans migrated for mining jobs. Delaware. 1870s to 1920s, railroads and the Delaware breakwater boosted trade and tourism. Alaska. 1880, Joe Juneau and Richard Harris discover gold near present-day Juneau, leading to a mining boom. Tennessee. 1880, Memphis installs first U.S. sewage system separate from storm drains. Arizona. 1881, figures like Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday clashed with outlaws at the OK Corral. Montana. 1881, railroads arrived, transforming the economy. New Mexico. 1881, Sheriff Pat Garrett killed Billy the Kid in Fort Sumner. Rhode Island. 1881, the first U.S. men's single tennis championships were held in Newport. California. 1882, Chinese Exclusion Act targeted Asian immigrants, fueling racial tensions. Hawaii. 1882, Iolani Palace built. Montana. 1882, copper discovered in Butte, leading to industrial dominance by Marcus Daly, Anaconda Copper, and William Clark. New Jersey. 1882, Atlantic City builds the first oceanfront amusement pier. Alabama. 1883, Alabama enacted first U.S. antitrust law. Minnesota. 1883, Mayo Clinic founded in Rochester after a tornado. New York. 1883, Brooklyn Bridge opens, symbolizing engineering prowess. North Dakota. 1883, Marquis de Moraes founds Medora and builds meatpacking plant. Washington. 1883, Northern Pacific Railroad connects Washington to the east. Illinois. 1885, home insurance building, Chicago, becomes the world's first skyscraper. New Mexico. 1885 to 1889, Governor Edmund G. Ross served, previously famous for casting the decisive vote against impeaching President Andrew Johnson. Arizona. 1886, Apache leader Geronimo surrendered, ending Native American resistance. Montana. 1886 to 1887, the brutal winter of 1886 to 1887 decimated open-range cattle ranching. New York. 1886, Statue of Liberty is unveiled, becoming a beacon for immigrants. Florida. 1887, Eatonville, the first incorporated black-governed town in the U.S., is founded. Hawaii. 1887, Bayonet Constitution. White businessmen force King Kalakaua to sign a constitution stripping Native Hawaiians of voting rights. Oklahoma. 1887, Dawes Act dismantled tribal land ownership, allotting parcels to individuals. Indiana. 1887 to 1905, Indiana gas boom spurs industrial growth in northern counties. Ohio. 1888, Ohio State Fair canceled to celebrate Northwest Territory Centennial. District of Columbia. 1888, Washington Monument completed. Oklahoma. April 22, 1889, land rush of 1889 opened 2 million acres. Sooners cheated by entering early. North Dakota. November 2, 1889, North Dakota becomes 39th state, with South Dakota as 40th. South Dakota. November 2, 1889, Great Sioux Reservation broken up, South Dakota became a state. Montana. November 8, 1889. Montana became the 41st state, Helena chosen as capital. Washington. November 11, 1889. Washington becomes the 42nd state. Arizona. 1889. Phoenix became the permanent capital. Florida. 1889. Jim Crow laws emerge, enforced by poll taxes. Minnesota. 1889. The Aurora Ski Club, the first in the U.S., is founded. Washington. 1889. Great Seattle Fire destroys 25 city blocks. Florida. 1880s. Railroad tycoons Henry Flagler, East Coast, and Henry Plant, West Coast, transform Florida into a tourist and trade hub. Idaho. 1880s. Railroads expand. Kansas. 1880s. Railroads expanded, making Wichita and Dodge City major cattle hubs. Kentucky. 1880s. Hatfield-McCoy feud spills into Kentucky. Nebraska. 1880s. Sod house frontier. Settlers built homes from prairie sod due to lack of timber. Oregon. 1880s. Anti-Chinese riots force migrants into Portland's Chinatown. Wisconsin. 1880s. Iron mining expands. Immigration surges. Germans, Scandinavians, Poles. South Dakota. 1880s to 1920s. Homesteaders flooded in. Dakota boom ended with droughts and farm failures. Idaho. July 3, 1890. Idaho becomes the 43rd state. Wyoming. July 10, 1890. Wyoming achieves statehood as the 44th state. California. 1890. Yosemite National Park was established, championed by naturalist John Muir. Mississippi. 1890. Mississippi's new constitution disenfranchises black citizens through poll taxes and literacy tests. Oklahoma. 1890. Oklahoma split into Oklahoma Territory, West, and Indian Territory, East. South Dakota. 1890. Wounded Knee Massacre. U.S. troops killed 300 Lakota, ending armed Native resistance. North Dakota. 1890. Last major Native resistance ends with Wounded Knee Massacre. Utah. 1890. The LDS Church officially ended polygamy, paving the way for statehood. Arkansas. 1891. Arkansas enacted its first Jim Crow law, segregating railroads. Hawaii. 1891. Queen Liliuokalani takes throne. Last reigning monarch attempts to restore native Hawaiian power. Massachusetts. 1891. James Naismith invents basketball in Springfield. Idaho. 1892. Coeur d'Alene labor strikes erupt between miners and companies. Hawaii. January 17, 1893. Overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom. U.S. Marines Support Committee of Safety, led by Sanford B. Dole, in deposing Queen Liliuokalani. Colorado. 1893. Silver market crashes, devastating Colorado's economy. Illinois. 1893. World's Columbian Exposition showcases Chicago's innovation. Kentucky. 1893. Happy Birthday Melody is composed by Mildred and Patty Hill of Louisville. Montana. 1893. The Panic of 1893 caused economic collapse, but Montana State University, Bozeman, opened despite the crisis. Alabama. 1894. Racial violence as white miners killed black miners. Colorado. 1894. Colorado becomes the second state to grant women suffrage. Illinois. 1894. Pullman strike. Nationwide labor unrest begins in Chicago. Minnesota. 1894. Hinckley wildfire kills 418, prompting forest conservation efforts. Ohio. 1895. First automobile in the U.S. built by John Lambert. Rhode Island. 1895. Newport hosted the first U.S. Open Men's Golf Championship. Utah. January 4, 1896. Utah became the 45th state. Idaho. 1896. Idaho grants women's suffrage, among the first states to do so. Louisiana. 1896. Jim Crow era. Plessy versus Ferguson Supreme Court case, originating in Louisiana, established separate but equal doctrine. Montana. 1896. Plessy versus Ferguson upheld segregation, impacting Montana's black population. South Carolina. 1896. Plessy versus Ferguson legalizes segregation. Jim Crow laws disenfranchise black citizens. Alaska. 1896 to 1899. Klondike Gold Rush. Yukon, Canada, spills into Alaska, with prospectors traveling through Skagway and Dyea. Connecticut. 1897. The Pope Manufacturing Company of Hartford began making automobiles. Indiana. 1897. Paul Dresser writes Indiana's state song, On the Banks of the Wabash, Far Away. Massachusetts. 1897. First Boston Marathon run. First American subway system opens in Boston. Tennessee. 1897. Thetis Sims of Linden elected to Congress. Washington. 1897. Klondike Gold Rush boosts Seattle's economy. Maine. 1898. The USS Maine explosion in Havana Harbor sparked the Spanish-American War. New Mexico. 1898. New Mexicans joined Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders in Spanish-American War. Hawaii. July 7, 1898. U.S. annexation. Hawaii becomes a U.S. territory after the Spanish-American War, strategic for naval base at Pearl Harbor. Alaska. 1898. Nome Gold Rush begins after gold is found on the Seward Peninsula. Louisiana. 1898. Louisiana adopted constitution with grandfather clause to disenfranchise black voters. New York. 1898. Consolidation. Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island merge into Greater New York. North Carolina. 1898. The Wilmington Massacre sees white supremacists overthrow a biracial government, killing hundreds. Ohio. 1898. Goodyear Tire founded in Akron, later a global rubber hub. Iowa. 1890s. Populist movements emerged, reflecting farmers' struggles against monopolistic railroads and banks. Connecticut. Early 1800s. Connecticut became a manufacturing leader. Pennsylvania. 1800s. Pennsylvania led in coal, steel, and railroads. Pittsburgh became an industrial hub. Connecticut. Late 1800s. Connecticut solidified its industrial leadership. Delaware. Late 1800s. DuPont expanded into chemicals, nylon, Teflon, and Wilmington became an industrial hub. New Hampshire. Late 1800s. Industrial boom in textiles, lumber, and shipbuilding, particularly in Manchester and Portsmouth.